Hello there, and welcome back to a Delusions of Mediocrity battle report, where the dice rolls are rubbish and nothing really matters. This weekend just gone, I was down at Wayland Games for the Essex Gt, so I'm going to try and bring you all 5 games from that tournament. So without further ado, let's get going with game 1. I was paired up against Anthony with his Legions of Nagash, and we were playing Starstrike from the New General's Handbook. We're in the realm of Shaman, but I don't really think it comes up in this game. So let's have a look at the lists. My list will not change over the next 5 battle reports, but here we go. I'm taking my Deepkin. I've got an Achillean King with an Ethereal Amulet. His job is pretty much going to be to skirmish around the outside, pick off characters, pick off smaller units. He can do that reasonably well. Just a good guy, really. Got the Soul Render. I've given him the Cloud of Midnight for some shenanigans, and along with the Reavers and the Thralls here, they are my Namati core. Got Tidecaster General with Born from Agony, because I might as well, and Steed of Tides, there to flip the tides, because I am in the Futhan, however you pronounce that, enclave, which lets me run and charge twice in the game. Soul Scryer to point the stinky finger at stuff to make me charge it, and to let me put some stuff, some units out in ambush, and then 2 units of 6 Zapiels and 20 Eternal Guard, who are just cheap bodies. And I had 10 points left over. I've gone fairly magic light, so I've popped in the Malevolent Maelstrom, but spoiler alert, it doesn't even get cast once over, let alone this game, but in the tournament. My opponent had his host of Nagash without Nagash, so Arcan, Neferata, Vampire Lord with the Ether Quartz, so to get some CPs back, which he's going to be spanning through Neferata the entire game. The interesting bit here, he's got a Cogsmith and a Cannon, so one of the new mercenary allies there for a bit of range threat. Not too bad for me, because I can force his hand as to what he has to shoot, but it chips off wounds throughout the game. 2 units of Chainrasp Horde, 10 Direwolves, and 4 Morghast Archai, and he bought an extra command point there, because obviously he needs the command points, and he didn't have, because of the allies, he doesn't get a first turn command point there. Right, so in we go. He has priority turn 1. I can't remember if he gave it to me or I gave it to him. Fairly sure he took first turn, mostly so we can put up his Neferata boost. So here's our deployment. I've put my boats up here in the middle. We are playing with scenery rules, but I'm not sure it comes up a whole lot. Oh yeah, so here's the big thing. He's got one from the New General's Handbook, a piece of terrain here that if your general starts within a certain range of it at the start of their turn, they get an extra command point. His general's Neferata, so that's really good for him. He won the roll off and picked this side, which was just all round better, and had the door behind him for a nice bit of breeze here. Right, his grave sites has popped one here, he's got a couple down here, one here and one here. Basically he's intending to castle up in this side of the board and just tank things, really. I've got some infantry here, my general, the Soul Render down here. I've got, you can't quite see it, but I've got a unit of eels down on this side, my Eternal Guard and some Thralls, basically some Reavers here. So I'm just trying to make sure that wherever that first objective lands, I can go and claim it reasonably easily, and I'm fairly sure that I put the other unit of 6 eels and the King off the board. I mean, ideally I'd like to get in and get to his stuff, but everything here is within Neferata's bubble, which is an absolute pain. So he takes turn 1. He just shuffles everything up a little bit. He's able to put out Neferata's ability twice, and I think he got 1 command point back. looking back at this, I think we might have misplayed this. I think we both forgot that he doesn't get his command point turn 1. Either that or we got a lucky roll on the brooch, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change a whole lot either way. And that was his turn 1 essentially. His spells don't really do much. His cannon doesn't really do much because it has to shoot at my Eternal Guard, pops a couple off, so it doesn't really do much. Looking at this, I must have flipped the tides, so I'm going into Flood Tide here in my turn 1. The reason I think I flipped is because he'd taken priority. I wanted to make him think twice if we go back to his deployment, because I wanted to be able to put huge amounts of pressure on him if he decides to unpack to try and cover the board a bit more. But as it turns out, because he doesn't, he stays in this tight bubble. Oh, he's cast, he's got his Bellwind Vortex up here on his Vampire Lord, which is an amazing Eidolon conversion, by the way. But because he didn't really unpack, my Flood Tide is essentially wasted. So, after all said and done, I've pushed up. I'm just, like I said, I'm just trying to cover as much of the board as possible. Eels here, what I want to do is I don't want to give him any easy charge with his Morghast, so trying to hide a little bit here. My Eternal Guard have come up here. This is mystical to give them a bit of protection, really. My prayer, what would have been great is at any point in this game to be able to get the Deepkin prayer off to stop his units from flying, because that would have royally screwed him over given the way he's packed himself in here. But unfortunately, if I forget to mention it, it doesn't come off at any point. A bit of shooting happens. I think I pop a wound off Neferata because I'm outside of her 15-inch shoot bubble, just to put a bit of pressure on her, just hoping get some spiky rolls, pop a few wounds off so that her bubble goes down a bit, so he's not able to heal them up as fast as I take them off, but that doesn't really pan out either. I win priority into turn 2, so I go into my High Tide. I've now got 3 command points, and the Star Strike objective lands pretty much here where my boat is. So this is my movement phase. Now I decide I'm going to try and put a bit of pressure on. I apologise for the blurry pick. So what's happened here is my units have all congregated around my boat where they've got a bit of protection. Lots of bodies to try and hold this objective, because the only thing on this flank that can really get to me and hurt me are his characters, and if he splits them off there, I'll more than happily flood around on this side. Now what I've decided to do is I've brought the eels up here, see what they can charge, but because the objectives landed on this side, and you'll see, I'm just trying to make him split his forces a bit. The Eternal Guard have run backwards, and the idea here is to, again, they can now be the ones that can hopefully go cover my own objectives as and when they drop down here, and we'll see. And I've got some very fast Reavers, and hopefully what I'm hoping for basically is that next turn the objectives land on this side of the board, and these guys can go cover his objective and they can cover mine quite easily. Again, shooting, not a lot happens. So what I've done, as you can see the previous one, is I've put my other forces round on this side. Now I'm very, very aware that I'm not going to be able to do as much damage, what with being at -2 to hit, but what I've done is I've charged everything in. Now, so a few reasons. First of all, I want to box him in. So what we've done here is we've protected these units from his chaff, because his small unit of Chain Rasp up here are now fighting with these eels. I've got the king here to respond to anything else. I think he actually missed his charge, which was a bit of an annoyance. And these eels here are tagging the direwolves, and I've got my thralls in here tagging his Chain Rasp, but I'm fairly confident I can grind that out. Now he's got a choice to do to make here, because he's got 3 hitter units basically. He's got Arcan, he's got Neferata, and he's got the Morghast, and so he can either try and deal with my eels with them, or in which case they're not sporting the characters. So basically I'm just trying to split him up a little bit here. I mean, the end of the combat phase, not a whole lot happens, unsurprisingly. I kill a few dogs. Now I accidentally here, and we just played it that way, I had actually moved far enough up to tag the Morghast in. Wasn't planned, but hey ho, it happens. And you know, the combat's not a whole lot happen. So we go into my opponent's turn 2. It looks like I had to use a command point, most probably on a battle shock test. Or no, I think I actually spent it to try and re-roll the King's Charge at the top of the board up here, but I also failed, so that was unfortunate. So, my opponent's turn 2. Again, he's fairly cagey on this one, and I think... So what's happened here is he doesn't want to commit his characters off to the middle objective, because if he does that, he's losing the protection over here on these guys. Which I think he doesn't want to do. His magic, I think there's a Vile Transference happens to heal up Neferata. He heals a load of stuff back from his grave sites, and we just grind some fighting out. So that's the board at sort of the end. What he's done is he's moved Arcan back over here to try and deal with these eels a little bit. You know, just counter that threat just in case I smash through in his turn here with some lucky rolls. He doesn't. He wants to have something there to be able to deal with it. I mean, things could have gone worse here. I lose one eel. This is just grinding up here. You know, I lose some thralls. Hey ho, life happens. And there we go. So at the end of my turn 2, I'd scored 2 points, and I won priority going into turn 3, which is quite good for me. So I'm back on Flood Tide. I hadn't changed this round, but I should be back on Flood Tide here. So what I've done is here. So this I think must be after my charge phase. So my king's gone in here to... I was hoping... I think he did a few mortal wounds on the charge onto Arcan. My Reavers, again, just trying to pick a few wounds off here and there. Probably, retrospect, better off trying to pick a few wounds off the cannon, but because that was just a lost cause. He's just bringing all the stuff I kill back with his grave sites, which is a real pain. But what I've done over here is I lost a few more eels to... I think probably in his combat phase and battle shock and so on and so forth. So what I've done is I've retreated them, retreated these guys. No point feeding him more than he needs to. Because at this point, and I charge my Soul Render in to tag his wolves and tag his Morghast over here. And I leave these guys because I'm fairly confident that they can't get over here and ruin life for these chaps. Oh, and start of the turn, we can't see it, but you can actually see my objective landed down over here, which is ideal because these guys can grab them. And his objective actually did land somewhere up on the my right, his left flank, which is absolutely beautiful for me. So anyway, this is the situation. He's going to pop his Cloak of Midnight and tag these units so that they can't do much. And the king, he's basically gone in. I reckon he can last a couple of turns against Arcan and basically hold his big threats back. And that's the idea here. I take a couple of wounds, don't really do much to him. The Chain Rasp unfortunately are grinding off my eels over here and nothing happens because he's just sat there like an absolute boss. These guys I get to grow a load back, which is ideal for me. That was the other reason for treating them, is I knew I could grow some back and they can come back in. And 2 eels actually over here, they can actually maybe late game help me a little bit by being stupendously fast. So what I've actually ended up doing is with my in my movement phase, you can actually see over here, so there's his objective. I actually ended up having to run my Soul Scribe back over here. The Reavers didn't quite run high enough, roll high enough on their runs, even re-rolling to contest this one. So I've brought them back down here, and my Eternal Guard are coming up to really help secure this, because I'm fairly sure at some point something's going to get in and start smashing. But this is 20 bodies, this is 10 bodies, they get 6 up after save. These guys just exist aggressively, so I'm hoping to hold this out as much as I can. But anyway, that's the situation at the end of the turn. I scored 9 points there for all 3 objectives, so I'm going up to 11-0 at this point. So we go into my opponent's turn 3. He can't do much with this because they're tagged. So what he's done is actually using his grave sites, he's actually regrowing his units back over here. There's some magic cast to do some mortal wounds up here. Not a whole lot. His magic wasn't super effective, it was mostly healing. The cannon's been forcing to shoot at various bits and bobs, but not a whole lot. So here we go. So he's regrowing a load of stuff. I think he cast enough spells, actually, having just said that, to take off the king, which was a bit annoying. I was really hoping to tie Arcan up here. So as you can see, he's flown Arcan up over here. Arcan is back down here. Neferata's going over here. She's going to go chasing this objective. And you'll see that these guys here, what he's done is retreated them out of combat. He's retreated his Morgeist out, but he can't charge, which is super important for me because I tagged them with this little hero over here. Regrowing his wolves for better positions, regrowing. Basically, I was just really impressed with his tactical use of summoning his units back. So, in his turn, he makes a... I think he's able to charge with these guys. He's able to charge with these guys over here, but it's not going to be enough. I think Arcan actually misses his charge, if I remember correctly. Neferata gets over there, which is an absolute pain, and just absolutely twats everything over there. So this is the situation, and at the end of his turn, he scores... well, he does some damage here, but not enough, crucial. I think it's within 1 of me still claiming this objective this turn, which is really important. He's died horribly, 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 and I'm still grinding with my Earls up here. It's just an absolute pain in the arse. So anyway, at the end of his turn, I think he scores 3 points, and we roll for priority going into turn 4, and I win. So this turn I have cover, which I'm fairly sure I forget gloriously. So there we go. So I'm just continuing my defensive moves. As you can see, these guys have come up here to just swamp this and go, you're going to have to kill a lot of us. Retrospect, what I probably should have done is move them up as well. Just to hold it for that little bit extra time, because I could just tag this. These guys are... the Eels are coming back in. What I really want to do is just try and hold his wolves up as much as possible. These guys are trying to pump as many shots as possible into here. So, in my charge phase, sorry again for the blurry picture. I'm just trying, because I'm trying to take these pictures quickly so as to not slow the game down too much in a tournament setting. So some of them are a little bit rubbish. So the Thralls have charged in here. The Reavers have charged up here. I think Neferata's just going to sit there now for a little bit. I've retreated my Eels over here. The reason for this is I couldn't retreat them far enough to contest this turn, but what it means is Neferata can't really afford to ignore them yet. So if she runs off, then they will just grab this objective, so she has to do something and deal with it. So you'll see here, these guys have actually rubbished a load of the chain rasp, which is really important for me, just to make sure I keep scoring over here. And again, just wounds is wounds, and I've brought my general up over here. The other reason is basically it gives me a better chance of getting the you can't fly prayer off, which just still doesn't happen. And I score 8 points on that one, because I no longer am scoring this one, so I get 4 points here, 4 points here, so I'm up on to 19 points. So my opponent's turn 4. So very, very cool stuff happening here. So what's happened is he has regrown a few of these and brought them up, because what he wants to do is basically tag these my Eels, but by regrowing the wolves all the way up here, he's now contesting this objective with them. So absolutely great use of that. He's being able to bring Neferata down to just absolutely squish these guys. So magic has probably taken these off, something like that. So I'm just in a spot of bother here. I've scored as many points as I'm gonna, and I'm just gonna struggle at this point. So here we go, his charge phase. He's actually been able to run these guys over here and charge with 3D to get rid of these. Arcan's come into my Eternal Guard. Neferata's come in and just taken this objective off me. So in one fell swoop, having scored not a lot throughout the game, he's just come in and absolutely rubbished my right hand flank. And he actually scores all 3 objectives for 12 points. So the score at the end of turn 4 is 19-15 to me. I needed a few things to go my way here, such as stopping stuff from flying, and I just didn't, which is unfortunate. But, you know, that's why we roll the dice and we see what happens. I mean, I did win priority every single turn this game, so I can't complain too much. So here we go, my turn 5. We're back to running and charging, which isn't going to do a whole lot for me. So, what I think I've done here is there are a few Eternal Guard left, so they've actually run away to try and get themselves on this objective. My eels have parked themselves here to be as far away as possible. I think I just about managed to score this one this turn. The Eternal Guard will let me score this one, and I've just tried to bring some units around, and it's going to be fluky rolls. The idea being that maybe I can shoot enough of these off, charge in, kill enough of them, that I might score this one this turn, which would get me the win. Just really desperate. These guys couldn't really help that much, and again, because she's on full wounds, anything I commit down here is at -2 to hit, because he's just been spamming two command points every single turn with Neferata, and his Ether Quartz Brooch is actually always triggering at least once, so he's nicely topped up on CP. So at -2 to hit, my army is on 5s to hit, which is just not good enough, really. Long story short, if we speed through these last 2 turns, is I score 2 objectives, one up here and one down here this turn. I'm just about able to, I believe. Again, you'll notice I've tagged the wolves, but it's just not enough, because the grave sites, he just brings them back, or he moves out and he just swamps it anyway. So into his turn 5, it's 29-15 to me, and as you can expect, all he does is he swamps that one, swamps this objective, everything goes down here and absolutely murders me, and he scores 15 points, and the final score, agonizingly, is 29 points to me and 30 points to my opponent, which is just, unfortunately, a major loss. And when we tallied it up, from a very, very tight game, 29-30, I get 0 tournament points for a major loss, and I actually killed nothing in his army. I spent the entire game trying to play the scenario, ignoring kill points, so it was a big fat 0 in victory in tournament points and a big fat 0 in kill points. So an absolutely cracking game, really tactical, really tight. My opponent Anthony was an absolute pleasure to play against. Couldn't have asked for a better game to start. A bit gutted with the loss, but hey ho, it was tight. The score doesn't show us tight. It was tight. Very, very different game to style that I'm used to having to play with Deepkin. But anyway, so a loss for game 1. We'll just have to see how the rest of the games goes. So please join me for the next battle reports.